Hello, welcome to Stories in Time. My name is Ellouise Schoettler. I'm a storyteller. At my house, I had a surprise last week. Well, let me tell you the backstory on that. When you reach 80, you begin going through all your extra boxes and your drawers, hoping that you'll find things that you can get rid of. You know, because over time, you do collect a lot of things. I've done the collecting, and now I'm doing the searching. Well, the surprise was that I reached in and I found a surprise on the top of a stack of papers. My Aunt Katherine had always supported me when I started doing my storytelling about 25 or 30 years ago. She thought it was just wonderful, darling, just wonderful. And you need that kind of thing. And one day I got a large manila envelope in the mail from her, Catherine Brown, in Charlotte, North Carolina. When I opened it up, there were a number of papers, her papers, for me, with a little note that says, I keep thinking about you and your storytelling. And so when I found these are stories that I have written. And I decided to send them to you. Maybe you'll be able to use them. Well, I've read them. I know her. And yesterday I read one particularly that I wanted to share with you. Now, one of the things I'm doing today that's not usual is I'm going to read you her part. I don't want to put my words into Kaki's story because I loved her and I love to hear what she had to say. I hope that you will too. Now, if she were here with us today, which she cannot be, she's left a long time ago, but she would be 103. And I think that if she was here and she was 103, she would be more lively than I am. And so I like to get her energy back. I'll put on my glasses because I'm going to read this. My Aunt Katherine Diggle Brown went back to Sacred Heart College in the 1960s. She had graduated from there from high school, and she wanted to continue her education. Now, she was not uneducated. She had taken senior classes to be a stenographer, and she always worked in a doctor's office until doctors all went to war, and she didn't want to stay with meeting new bosses, and so she joined the WACs during World War II and served overseas. And when the war was over and she came back and she met her husband and she got married and she had her children. Now, when she's writing us in the 20s, no, I don't think it's in the 20s. The early story was in the 20s. This must have been in the 60s, 1960. She had enough time that she could go up the road to Belmont Sacred Heart College and go to school again. She reveled in it. She told me she particularly loved one of her English classes where they were required to do some creative writing. And when I began storytelling, she gave me a few of her stories. I'm sharing this one with you in this essay, which she titled Childhood Memories of the Circus. She's talking about a morning in the 1920s in the lineup of 8 Diggle children. My daddy was number 4, and Kaki, that's what we called Catherine, was number 5. And they would all have shared this day. Here she goes. In 1923, the circus was coming to town, and those words are now again ringing in our ears each time we turn on the radio or the television set. And every newspaper carries pictures and advertisements describing the fascinating details of the coming circus. Well, my children are eagerly awaiting its arrival, and when I see their enthusiasm, I'm carried back 35 years to the circus days of my childhood. Whether or not my brothers, sisters, and I attended the yearly appearance of the circus in our town did not slow the pleasure we experienced over its arrival. For weeks before it came, we 8 children had discussed it at length. We had then 2 things that children of today are missing. And this is 1960 she's talking about. First, the arrival and unloaded of the long circus train. They didn't have that to see. And second, the exciting parade through the very center of the town prior to the matinee in the afternoon. Something to really look forward to. My father would take us at 4 a.m. in the mornings, load us up into our old Packard touring car, and quickly make his way to the depot where the train was to be unloaded. Here we would find hundreds of people with squealing, excited children watching open-mouthed the fascinating proceedings. Each member of the circus personnel was busy. The performers, the train crew, the roustabouts, and even the animal trainers. The placid camels chewed and chewed slowly, and the wild animals added to the general noise with their roars, a deep and different roar from each different animal. But the most interesting of all of us children were the elephants. How magnificent they were. They were magnificent. They could shove the animal cages around as easily as we moved checker men on a board, and their slow, lumbering motions had us entranced. Each gaily painted cage and truck that was unloaded brought forth louder and louder cries of delight and laughter from us all, and we would watch each one make its way down the road toward the fairgrounds until it was out of sight, till it was hidden in the faint haze of sunrise. By the time the last one had disappeared, we would begin to realize that we were cold and hungry, so it was back home quickly for all of us to have a good hot breakfast. Circus Day during my childhood was fun from start to finish because all the schools were closed. This was done so that everyone in Charlotte could attend the parade at 11 o'clock. And such a parade. The ringmaster, resplendent in his red and black uniform and high silk hat, riding a sleek black horse. He's the one that led the procession. Next in line was the circus band, with each member in a red and gold uniform. There were beautifully dressed girls on horseback, elephants wearing gaily colored velvet or satin trimmings, clowns by the dozens as they walked down the street, danced on one side, and then might approach one of the children, boy or girl, and just shake hands. That was the thrill of a lifetime for those children that morning. Then would come the animal cages, roaring lions in one, a leopard or two in another, bears of all sizes that through the eyes of a child looked ferocious, and then a cage containing large snakes. How relieved we all were to see that this particular cage had different thick glass sides, plus the usual iron bars they couldn't get out. The steam calliope was always one of the most thrilling sights for me. The sounds, for days following the parade, I would attempt to imitate the sounds that it made. If I take my children to see the circus this year, I can be sure of one thing. When the band strikes up its opening tune, I shall close my eyes and once again tinkle in anticipation of that marvelous spectacle of my childhood. She talked in really wonderful words, and I always thought she was wonderful. And reading her paper out loud, I can hear her voice, think of her joy in remembering and in telling stories about the things she wanted to share. And when I tell stories, I think of her. I do. I think of her, and I feel close to her. Before I go, would it surprise you to know that she was named for Catherine Lonergan Cobb, an Irish girl, a girl from Tipperary, who came to North Carolina when she was 12 years old? Cocky's great-grandmother, my great-great-grandmother. We were so lucky. The Irish connection, rich with Blarney and love of stories. Thank you.